Doing this on a quarterly basis gives you that time for you to try and test these changes, and it also gives you that checkpoint in between where you're actually sitting down and taking note of how things have been working, and you are doing these resets every quarter. Hello and welcome back to Save Ourselves, or if you're new here then hi, I am Aparna, and in today's video we will be talking about how to do a reset for the second quarter of 2022. Now this video is actually the first part of a two-part series, and in this one we're going to talk about the general framework of doing a reset and how we can go about it, and in the second video I'll be giving you a list of actionable tasks that we can actually implement in order for us to do that reset. Now along with that, I also have a newsletter and a blog post coming up soon, and in the newsletter we're going to talk about how to review the past quarter, and in the blog post I'll be talking about how to plan for the next quarter. So all in all, this is going to be a package deal with 2 videos, 1 newsletter and 1 blog post. So make sure you're subscribed to get access to all of this content. It's absolutely free, just make sure that you subscribe and that you check out all the links in the description. Now without further ado, let's dive right into today's video. So in order to do this quarterly reset and get our lives a little bit more straightened out for the second quarter of 2022, I came up with a framework that involves 3 R's, which are reflect, review and reframe. And now we're going to tackle them one by one and understand them better through examples. Let us begin with the first R, which stands for reflection. Now for reflection, we essentially want to look back on whatever is past and make note of everything that has happened. No judgments, but simply observing whatever has happened and just taking a stock of our lives. That's it. And I think especially for the second quarter, reflection is a very integral part because the first quarter consists of January, February and March, and because we start a new year in January, I think the first quarter is more filled with visions and hopes and dreams, and that's why it's a little different than the rest of the quarters of the year, which is why reflection becomes very necessary here to make a note of how things have gone. What were your plans for the new year? Were there any resolutions that you set? What were your goals for the entire year that you had in mind? And how had you broken them down for each month specifically? And just make a note of everything that has happened simply by observing and without passing any judgment on yourself. Now that's the reflection part, and now let us move on to the second R, which stands for review. So a review is essentially doing an audit based on the information that you gathered from your reflection part. Now that you've looked back on your Jan, Feb and March, you have a set of data and some information on how things have passed. And in the review part, we're going to look at what is working and what is not working. And we're just going to do an analysis of all the data that we have in hand. Now here, I would recommend noting all of this information down in a notebook maybe, or even digitally, but it's essential to note it down so that the data that you have can be maybe compared to the upcoming resets that you would do, and you can essentially track your progress throughout all of these quarters. So I would recommend that, but if it's not feasible, then go ahead and do this mentally. That works as well. So let's begin with the review part, and here we want to take a note of, were your plans actually turned into reality, or did you get off track? What went wrong? What are the things that work, and what are the things that you would like to do more of? So there are a few questions that you can ask yourself based on the kind of lifestyle that you lead, and based on these questions you can analyze whether your plans are working out for you and whether the habits and systems that you have in place work in your favor or not. Now this review leads us to our third and final R, which is the reframe. Now in the reframe part, we essentially want to make small but significant changes that can help us alter our workflow and the processes that we have set in place and make them a lot more smoother in the upcoming quarter. So now that we have the data and now that we have analyzed it, we want to make the changes that can help us minimize all of the errors that are happening here and all of the unnecessary stuff that can be eliminated from these processes. We want to make our routines and processes frictionless and make them a lot more smoother and better for them to work better for us. Now let's take this framework of 3 R's and apply them to an example so that we understand this better. Let's consider my sleep cycle, for example. If that's something that I want to reset for the upcoming quarter, In the reflection part, I would make a note of how I've been sleeping and at what time I've been going to bed, at what time I've been getting up every day, and what has my pattern been like for the past 3 months. Now that I have the data, I find out that okay, I've been going to bed around midnight and I have been waking up around 9 a.m. I've been getting about 8 to 9 hours of good sleep every day, and now I'm gonna go to the review part and see if this has actually been working for me or against me. With my current schedule in mind, what I find out is that 9 a.m. seems to be a little later than what I would prefer, and actually makes me start my work late and end my work later in the evening, which leaves me with less time to do other activities. So in the review section, I noted that this is not the most ideal pattern for me and it's a little bit later than I would like. Now in the reframe part, what I want to do here is actually take note of this analysis and make the changes in my sleep cycle so that my entire routine works much better for me. Now the way that I can make this work is by making small changes throughout my daily routine so that they favor me getting up earlier in the morning. Some ways of doing this could be avoiding caffeine later in the evening, or setting my alarm for earlier than 9 a.m., or having other accountability systems that make me get out of bed before 9 a.m. at an hour that I find feasible for myself. So this is how you can apply this framework to all aspects of your life and make small changes to all of them. The important part here is to alter it in small but significant ways so that it's not a big radical change for you to go through, and it also gives you the time of 3 months, which is the next quarter, to implement and see if these changes are actually working for you. Doing this on a quarterly basis gives you that time for you to try and test these changes, and it also gives you that checkpoint in between where you're actually sitting down and taking note of how things have been working, and you are doing these resets every quarter. Now these small changes are going to compound over time, and maybe the results won't be very evident right in the first quarter itself, but maybe somewhere down the line you start to realize the effect that this process has been having on you, and that's the exact intent of doing these quarterly resets for ourselves. So that is it for this video, but in the next week's video, as I mentioned earlier, I'll be coming with a list of actionable items that we can actually do to make this reset process a lot more smoother and get more clarity for the second quarter of 2022. Along with that, feel free to check out the links in the description below to subscribe to my newsletter and check out the blog post that's coming up. If you liked what you see, then give this video a thumbs up, because that's how I and the YouTube algorithm knows that this video is working and I can make more of these for you in the future. If you enjoy my content overall, don't forget to subscribe to the Save Ourselves channel and click the notification bell when you do so that you are notified whenever I upload. I hope you have a fun time doing your quarterly reset, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.